Hello, everyone, and welcome to Write Hive 2025. This panel is Writing Mental Health When the World Mirrors a Dystopian Novel. Mental health issues can be intrinsically challenging for many of us, but these struggles can be compounded when our immediate environments and the broader world are in turmoil. Our panelists are going to discuss how their individual experiences with mental health are reflected in their work and how we can cope with similar difficulties in real life and in stories. And so, thank you all for being here today. Looking forward to this discussion. I'm going to have each panelist introduce themselves and then we'll get to the questions.
Hi guys, I'm Amanda Cessor. I wrote the book with Love Juniper. I am a pansexual and genderqueer author. I live in the San Bernardino Mountains. And yeah, a lot of my fiction focuses on struggles with mental health.
I'm Camden, she, her pronouns. I am an horror writer typically, but teacher by day, and I focus on special education and mental health, queer writer. Enjoy sort of exploring the nuances of mental situations.
Hi, I'm Katta Kis. I am a witchy queer romance author. I am currently writing my Pagans and Popstars series. The first book, oh no, I cannot do this mirroring thing. It's over here. It's somewhere. There's a book, and somewhere my hands will find it. Um, and yeah, I explore a lot of mental health topics in my books because I find people really interesting. I was almost a psychology major, but I kept falling asleep in the 4 o'clock Psych 101 class, so I figured it probably wasn't. But I still like it. Yeah, that's me.
Hi guys, I am BL Brown. I am also a queer witchy paranormal writer, so it's fun to be on this panel with Kata after long last. I am bisexual and I write a lot about mental health and recovery in my books. And the main character of my series is recovering from mental emotional abuse, and I don't shy away from it. And the series very much so delves into those struggles, the recovery, and the support systems that they build around it.
Hi, I am Marisa. I'm based in the UK. So I write anything within the speculative field, so that can range from fantasy to horror to dystopian to sci-fi. But what links all the books together is that they all have mental health representation to one degree or another. And the one that's featured, The Shadow Keepers, probably has the biggest amount of mental health representation, and it's a dark fantasy, and I like to blend up those kind of genres together to kind of give me a little bit of distance from the contemporary aspect of dealing with mental health issues, which is why I like the speculative stuff. But yeah, that's me altogether.
Excellent. And I'm your moderator for today. I'm Valerie Valdez. I am the author of the Chilling Effect trilogy, the space fantasy novel Pieces Lost, and I co-ed Escape Pod Magazine, your weekly science fiction podcast. All right, now on to the question portion. So, the first question, and I'm going to toss this one to Amanda. What are some ways you've written about mental health within your stories, and how does your writing reflect your experiences and your current circumstances?
So, in in my work, well, particularly my novel with Love Juniper, the main character actually suffers with pretty severe social anxiety. So I I like to that book is something I wrote for a younger version of myself that was really struggling with social anxiety, and as a result, um, I I tended to close off from other people and limit my own ability to make friends because I just felt like I was like too strange or that I was unlikable or things like that. So when I started writing this particular book, it was from a perspective of like an adult who had kind of come out the other side of that and learned that um the way that I phrase it is like I'm a special needs friend. Like I just require a little more maintenance as a person, and that means that I'm not for everybody. And that was kind of the message I wanted to send with the book. It's not that you're not deserving of friendship because of your mental health struggles. It's just that you have a higher need. You have like higher needs than maybe neurotypical or quote unquote normal people. And you just have to find people who love you despite that. So that's kind of what I try to I feel like a lot of my fiction ends up leaning that way. A journey of both self-love and learning to accept love from others. Um, I think as far as like current circumstances go, I think it, with the way that the social sphere is going right now, you do kind of have to um, be in a headspace where you're focusing on building your village around you, and making sure that the people that you allow in your life are people who make you feel whole and complete, and don't impugn on who you are as a person.
Yeah, that's a good segue into what I was going to talk about, which is that a lot of my stories are sort of based on this mental health, being alone, and then how a village is really helpful for that. So either if I'm leaning into the horror, it's like dealing with the fact that you feel very alone in that mental health, and like, yes, you have anxiety, but everyone around you has anxiety and they're all dealing with it in different ways, versus feeling like you have that community because everyone is sort of understands in a certain level of where we're at and what you need. Um, I found that for writing about mental health, sometimes it can be very challenging. I need to back away from it for a bit, or just write it out without thinking about the political context behind it, and then go back in and be like, okay, now I'm going to make this not just me getting everything out on the page, and finding that that help me process my experiences without overwhelming the reader.
Yeah, so I write a lot of my romances are pretty angsty. And so there's a lot of internal thought and like processing anxiety, trauma, that kind of thing. And for me, it is really helpful to sort of filter it through another character's experience. Because then I can see like, oh yeah, so this is what I do or what I used to do. And because I take a long time, so like I can go back to a draft and be like, oh, I used to do this 6 months ago and now I'm, better at it or whatever. Um, which is helpful for me. And just like playing with how it would look like for other people also feels more empathetic to me. Like obviously I can't necessarily walk in someone else's shoes, but if I can like say, oh, if I had these experiences, like how would it be a thing for me? How would it affect me? And how would it affect this person differently? What would they do? And so when I'm seeing that in someone else, I can be like, oh, I think I know what you're going through, and I can give you a little more grace.
Yeah, I think similarly to everyone who's spoken already, it's kind of almost a healing process for myself internally. Like a lot of the characters, I'm filtering how I reacted in a situation through someone who I think on the page is completely different from me, but yet their means of processing, I'll go back in the revision stage and go, oh wait, that's way more familiar than I thought it was. And I think at the heart of it, it's writing these characters and their experiences and how they approach and heal or don't, and how they seek aid or don't. I'm writing to my 27-year-old self, and I'm doing a lot of looking back and saying what did I need to hear in that situation that I don't know, like healing my inner young adult while being an adult maybe. Um, and just kind of pulling on this is the family I wish I had sought out, and being able to look back on those experiences and see in the past, oh, I did have that family. I need to reach out to them as an adult and kind of call on that, say, hey, thank you for that forever ago. I went through a whole internal process writing this character and realized I was drawing on their support system by my memories of you, and I didn't recognize it at that time. And so it's been very circumspect and very like hindsight, but I think I've had readers write out to me after reading Ritual Income, the first book in the series, and saying that they hadn't seen that examination of the sort of abuse that she's recovering from, tagged into being neurodivergent and bisexual and seeking that identity. They had felt so alone. And then to read it on the page, were just kind of startled, but then all in and rooting for this character who's very hard to love. They're like, wait, no, love her because that's all she needs. Like, so healing and looking back.
Yeah, I agree with the whole healing thing. I started writing really to help with when I started having problems with anxiety, and it was a way to channel my feelings into something else or to try and express myself or a distraction, something. Very quickly, I was A, bitten by the writing bug, and B, found it a fantastic way to distract myself and get out of my own head. I could get into these amazing worlds and just pretend I lived there instead, even though they're far scarier than real life, probably. And I think what drew me to the speculative field of exploring that is that I have always read horror and fantasy, and I gravitate towards that anyway. But I felt that it wasn't too personal if I could put it in a fantasy setting or a horror setting. It was that little bit step removed so that I could heal myself by what I was writing, but without slapping it around my face, kind of saying, this is you. And over the years, I didn't consciously set out to say I'm going to write mental health into every book. It just kind of happened that way. Mm-hmm. And I think when you do have those issues as an author, those things naturally leak out into your writing. And I really, really wanted my characters to be flawed in terms of mental health, but also save the world, that they were still strong. Because I really struggled with feeling like I was a weak person, that I didn't deserve love, or I should be able to do more. And if so and so is doing this and that, why can't I do that? And now I like to think of it as people who have mental health issues as we are warriors, because not only are we dealing with the same life that everyone else is living, but we have these extra stuff that we've got to carry around with us. And that was the message I really wanted to get across in my books, that these I write young adult, new adult, that these new adults are, struggling, but actually they're so strong at the same time, because for whatever reason, they are the one that's going to save the world, solve the problem, whatever it is. And I find that really empowering and hopeful. So I think that's my rambling way of answering the question. Yeah.
So our second question, and I'm going to toss this one at Camden first. How can you maintain your mental health as a writer when the social or political environment around you is unhealthy, hostile, or dangerous? And this is something different people have experienced and are experiencing in very different ways depending on where they are. So,
Yeah, this is a hard question. Um, I sat on with it for a while when you sent it out, but I feel like community is a big one for me, trying to find not just other writers, but other writers that are dealing with similar things. Um, I think sometimes people feel like relationships are very much this like either all give or all take, or you're trying to like it's a coin system that you're exchanging, but not being afraid to feel like, okay, like maybe I'm going to take a little more right now. Maybe I need a little more support, and that's okay. Like I don't feel guilty for feeling like you need support, and feeling like you need people to be there for you. And then as a writer, being able to step away, read. If you're, sometimes I'll write something and I'll be like, this is a great thing. And I think it needs to be in the world and I think I need to write it, but I don't know if I'm ready yet. And so I'll step away from the writing and I'll read books that are sort of in that vein so I can sort of keep it in my brain, without feeling like I have to dive into myself. So just being able to step away and know when it's time to come back. Because if it is something that's super important that you need to explore, then you will come back to it eventually, even if it's in a different way.
For me, I think it's really about balance. So being gentle with myself and assessing things like keeping news at a minimum right now, especially just keeping a light touch on things so I know what's going on, but I'm not like obsessed with it or freaking out. Like I know a lot of people um are really scared right now, and that's totally valid. Like I'm scared too, but if I sit in that fear all the time, I can't function. So keeping a light touch on that. And then when I go in to write, I sort of listen to my brain. So if I'm trying to write something and it's just, I can't, there's just a block, I'm like, okay, I need to pivot and do something a little different. So a lot of my books have these chapter openers that are sort of ephemera, they're songs or they're articles or whatever. And that's a really easy way for me to be like, I got some words in, or I edited this, um, but I didn't have to go into the whole story because maybe right now there's a bit I can't deal with, or there's my brain just can't write right now. There's no story in it, and it needs something a little easier, a little gentler, and that way I can like eke out progress even when I'm sort of blocked, which some days is a lot of my time.
I think similarly to Camden and Kata, community I think was one of the most like important things when everything around us started shattering, seeking out community and not to say like echo chamber in this, but more like-minded authors to bounce ideas off of, to bounce thoughts and fears off of, and just kind of process everything before going into a writing state of mind, and then finding that balance, as Kata said, within writing. I do a lot of following my id, and if my id is saying, hey, don't write grumpy witches who are struggling in their political environment, I'm gonna go write a German fairy tale that's high spice and just feeds me and gives me the giddies so I can come back over here into this space with some perspective and distance and some processing time after dealing, like going into community and saying, help, like, what do we do? So taking those two ideas and putting them together and feeding it into the writing time. And then outside balance is stepping away from the desk, like taking my dog out for a walk and giving him a ton of treats and watching him be ridiculous, just shutting the laptop and doing literally anything else, turning off the TV. Sometimes my family just sits in a quiet room together to not exist in everything so we can go back to it kind of freshly reset. And then I can approach the heavier topics in my books or go write something silly.
I think someone I've heard it's called like butter stories or butter something where it's like this is
Lather
just
the butter on.
yeah, it's like this is just a delicious thing for me that I like.
Yeah, I think maintaining a healthy mental health, it, sometimes it takes more effort than other times. I think it's really understanding, becoming familiar with what your triggers are, and
Mm.
then learning how to deal with those. And one of the things I do is I don't watch the news. I just learned a long time ago that that's something I can't deal with because I can just hear a headline and it will just echo in my head for years and I will fixate on it. And I'm like, that's not for me. So I think it's understanding yourself, but also forgiving yourself for not being able to do those things that other people can do, and just that's who you are. And surrounding, like everyone else has said, with the community of people who accept you for doing that, because that's how you need to cope in your world. So knowing your limits, knowing your triggers, and also being able to ask for help, which is a really hard thing to learn how to do. It's really hard to communicate to a partner, a friend, whoever, to say, I'm struggling with this and I need this support, because not everyone's a mind reader. And sometimes you just need to say to people, this is my struggle. Can you help me? And I think when I've started to do that, I have found the reception so much more positive than I expected. And that encourages, and with mental health now becoming so much more widely talked about, I feel like we're in a much safer area that we can talk about this as a planet, and get more support rather than all those stigmas that happen.
And that can be really hard, right? Just asking, just being clear, just saying the thing. Yeah.
I mean, a big thing for me is, as far as self-care goes, is taking my meds and talking to my therapist. I generally stay in therapy at all times because I would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And I just consider it maintenance. It's like an oil change every week for my brain. So, even if I just have a good week and all I have to say when I see my therapist is everything's great and I'm very happy, then, it's like, okay, a little celebration time. And then, when things get hard, it's nice to have a care team that I can go to, to to maintain my mental health. But, you know, that is a little obvious. But as far as everything else, writing has always been an escape for me, so that is primarily what I use it for. It helps. I guess I figure I have like two kinds of writing that I do, and one, kind of like BL was saying, is like, one is the stuff that I do that's heavy and it's for processing trauma and processing hurt and to use as a device for healing. And one is, you know, a crazy headline scared the crap out of me today. So I'm going to go into a world where nothing bad is happening, because that's a nice place to retreat to sometimes. That's how I started writing. I was a text-based role player for like 15 years. And then I was like, well, I don't like any of the writing I'm getting from my partners. So I guess I'll just start writing my own books. So, it, I think that, I think that writing can be inherently healing if you let it be. And you don't chase, everyone wants their book to be a New York Times bestseller, but I think if you don't focus on that as the thing that you're chasing, if you focus on writing for healing, or writing for joy, or writing for fun, it helps keep it in a place that that takes care of your brain, as you take care of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I do love writing as the ultimate solo RPG, though. That's
Yeah, literally just
yeah.
just running my own solo campaign for myself. It's fine.
Yes. And also being your own first audience member. It's like, I'm writing this for me. All right. I have a curveball that isn't in the questions, but it's something folks have brought up, and so I thought this might be a cool time to talk about it if anyone has any thoughts or ideas. And I'm gonna stretch out this question so that people can think while I'm saying it. How do we find community?
Hmm.
Where are places that we can look for it? How can we develop our communities so that we aren't relying exclusively on one person to help us through mental health issues, so that we do have that village that we can reach out to when we're not just experiencing problems, but perhaps when we also have extra mana or extra spoons, that we can then help share with other people. Does anybody have thoughts on where do you find the community? Where do you find the village? Kata.
So this is actually something I've been struggling a little bit with. I moved to my city 5 years ago, which is October 2020, 29. Wait, sorry, October
Amazing.
2019. 29 would be in the future. So 2019, right before the pandemic hit, which
Mhm.
means making friends has been a freaking struggle. But I still have friends from all over the place that I keep in touch with. And I have Discord servers, which are super helpful. I have a book club, which I love. Like, if you can find a good book club and a good writing group,
Yeah.
those are gold. And also, I've sort of come to the realization that not everybody is going to be your best friend. You have to take people for who they are and accept the limits that they have. So, maybe this person is the person you talk to about books, or this is the person that you talk to when you just there's work stuff and you can't talk to anyone else about it because they won't get it because they're not in the situation. Or this is the person you talk to when you can't talk to your partner, or you want to bitch about your partner. I'm sorry, I don't know if we can swear here.
I think we're
uh,
okay. Yeah.
but like, I think if you find people to just sort of spread the weight around, that's really helpful. And like, just know that, you know, they may show up for you in different ways. They may only be online friends. You may never meet them in person, or they may be only in person friends and you can never get them to text you back. But, everybody has their strengths, everybody has their like limitations. And if you don't stress about what they're supposed to be to you, if you don't have any expectations,
Mm-hmm.
at least for me, I find that really helpful because then I'm not like, hey, do you love me? Love.
Yeah, I think so I'm kind of coming at this from someone who deals with a lot of rejection sensitivity. ADHD is one of my colors of of neurospicy. So I I I find the best option for me a lot of times is one to always come whenever I'm trying to like make a friend, right? Because it does sometimes feel like a riddle to make new friends. I try to come from a place of generosity, and rather than thinking about what that person can give to me, I try to come at it from I really like what this person is doing, and I'm going to tell them that. And then, I have found, mixed results with that. Sometimes people are really generous back and they say kind things to you or like if we're specifically talking about like writing community, right? Like, sometimes they'll be like, "Oh my God, your book looks super interesting. It's been on my TBR," or "I would love to read your book," or "Let me know if you ever need a beta read," or whatever. So I tend to, when I find people who are like that, who kind of engage in the reciprocity of like the writing community, those I try to stick with pursuing those friendships versus like if I reach out to someone and they're kind of standoffish. And to be honest, like when someone is standoffish like that, I actually have a lot of trauma about like thinking I can make people love me. So it actually triggers a like a destructive habit of trying to make that person like me. And I kind of check in with myself at regular intervals to see how I'm feeling when I reach out to the person. So if I reach out to the person and I feel nervous and I keep like checking my messages to see if they've responded or like seeing if they've liked my post or like anything like that, then that's usually a clue that the the method of communication isn't necessarily good for my brain. And the no hate to anyone, like no one like is owed a reply or owed a certain thing or anything like that. But, you know, part of creating your community is acknowledging when certain people should not be in it or when you shouldn't pursue a relationship with a certain type of person. And it's not that those people are bad, it's just that they don't jive with your wavelength. And then just as far as like logistics go, going to a lot of book events, if you have a local indie bookstore and they host events, go to them, join a book club. Discord servers are incredible, especially if you're someone who doesn't like phone calls or like being in person with people. There are a lot of people who aren't comfortable hanging out in person. Instagram is my big one. Back when Twitter was not a hot mess, it was great. But now that it is, Threads is a great alternative. So it's just making sure that you're in the circles of people who like what you like. And then just like I said, tuning into how you feel when you're reaching out to people and protecting yourself, not because anyone's bad, but just because the way that your brain works makes friendship different for you, you know.
So I also recently moved to a new city in 2020, which was a bold decision. Um, and so I had a very similar thing to Kata, where I was really struggling to make community. In a weird way, COVID sort of worked out for me because I knew I was going to move to the city. And so I joined all the online stuff that I could and figured out which communities I should be part of before I actually moved there because everything was online. So they didn't know I didn't live there. And it was a great way to just be like, oh, I'm just going to try this out and see if it feels like a community for me. Discord has been a really good, amazing platform, and Twitter when it did exist. So thinking about like being the person that you want to be on unapologetically, Like, if you want to be the kind of person that writes notes to your friends and you want friends to write notes back to you, then you have to start writing notes. Or if you want people to have cooking parties, then start making cooking parties. Thinking about what are the things that you need and not being afraid to share that that's the thing that you would want out of the relationship, I think is really helpful because people aren't going to know unless you tell them.
Amanda made the point about book events and finding community in that way. And I am someone who also struggles with rejection sensitivity. I've talked about kind of the relationship I was in and a lot of the recovery and healing I've done over the years from that. And if you are a person who's been made to feel small and less than and told that you're not good enough to be in this situation, it can be really hard to go to book events, to go to things. I found stuff that was like, I took my masks off, right? To Camden's point, how do I live unapologetically? I like running and I like drinking craft beer. I found a running and drinking club and I threw myself in there. Same thing. I kind of like got in their little internet space and just kind of floated around and then showed up. So people already kind of were aware of me. And so it was a little bit more welcoming. There's local book clubs where I am. I'm in an area where you really need to know what kind of book club you're going to because not all of them are going to be my kind of book club. And some of them have been very eye-opening and very welcoming and kind and have gotten me to read genres that I would normally just walk past and ignore. Others, I just kind of did the Homer Simpson, like into the grass. I was like, nope, this was the wrong one. But I would, one thing that has really helped, especially in the last 6 months of the world, is taking my masks off and being aware of it and unapologetically showing up as myself. And I drew back to that instance of I like craft beer and running. I'm going to go where those people are. I just went on a flurry of signing up for book events as a vendor and not an attendee because then I was like, all of me is on display on this table. I have my queer books, I have my mental health responsive like books talking about that. I have my little butter books over here. I have stupid stickers I made in a flurry when I woke up at 2 a.m. with a dumb phrase in my head. And it's all out there, and people can stop at my table and engage with me, or they can keep moving by. And it's like a nice, it was an unmasking of self that was very empowering because when the people keep moving by, I'm like, I'm not for you and you're not for me. And that's awesome. We know that. And that's been really helpful to go at those events and talk with other vendors and be like, oh, hey, we're all at this really wacky, very themed specifically event together. So already we found a sense of community. And then within that, drilling down and kind of getting in there. And then it's helped to meet people from the discords because, again, the rejection sensitivity comes in. And I'm like, I could answer this question, but there are 10 people who know so much more than I do. So I shouldn't be here and I shouldn't speak. But then I meet these people in person at events. And so they're like, no, you should absolutely answer questions. So it's kind of a nice, like, I put myself in the room, but then I put myself somewhere to meet them in person in a safe, like, performative distance to where I'm like, okay, you approached my table. We've identified each other as safe people to be in community with. So,
Yeah, there's like an opt-in-ness to it, right? Which
yeah,
that is
I'm a
good.
newsletter.
Yeah, yeah. As opposed to like a school environment where, yeah, you got to be there every day. You got no choice in the matter. It's like, no, you have self-selected into
Yeah.
doing the beer and running.
Briefly, I think everyone has made some really great points. I think the finding community for me is really about being open-minded and also the ability to let go. And I
Mhm.
think when you're open-minded and non-judgmental, people can walk into your life that you don't expect and bring a real benefit to you. And equally, everybody that walks into your life, I don't think you can expect them to be there forever. And that's one of the lessons that I learned growing up. And, when you're a teenager and you have friendship problems, and, some people leave your life, and that's okay. It's not like a bad mark on you or you haven't done anything wrong. It's just they don't need to be in your life anymore. And there's a reason for that. And the ability to let that go and to appreciate it, what it was, what it was, rather than to dwell on any hurt. And it's hard to do, but I think that's something that we can all strive to do to build a better community and recognize the positive influences around us in our lives. But like some of the others, Twitter was where I made my writing community to start with. And we're still there. I mean, we're only there for the DMs. But Twitter did weirdly, the app disappear from my phone yesterday, so I don't know if that's a sign.
I did forget to mention that another great way to find community is through conventions.
Mm,
So, like going to the local writing conventions, there's various levels of intensity if you're not an extroverted person that doesn't want to be with 10,000 people. Um, Finding, and a lot of conventions have really great spaces where you can be like, well, I'm going to play board games all day, or I'll just go to panels and then I don't have to interact with people. But when I feel ready, I can,
mhm,
which is a really great sort of like opt-in, like
mhm,
Beal was saying.
A lot of conventions now too do have like quiet rooms.
mhm,
So, before if you're someone who gets really nervous in crowds, you can check like the accommodations list usually, and it might say like family room or like feeding room or
mhm,
like quiet room, and usually they have a couple of those spaced out throughout the convention, so you can actually go escape for a little bit.
mhm.
And oh wait, you just bring headphones too. If it gets too crazy, just bring some noise canceling headphones. And normally, if people, normally in nerdy spaces, if people see you have headphones in, they're gonna leave you alone.
As opposed to some other spaces. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'll do one plug for the Right Hive Discord. Join it if you're not already there, which you should be if you're watching this, I would think. But that's a great place to start a community, and you can then ask people there what other communities perhaps they belong to that they might recommend. So, hey. And so what Amanda was just saying actually segues into our next question. So we're going to go right into that. And we're going to start with Katza for this one. What are some specific self-care techniques that you practice or you recommend? So give us your strats.
Um, so I think one really important one for me right now is focusing on joy and then also doing things, whether that's like going for a walk. I have to leave the house every day. Um, that's something I figured out in the pandemic, and it's a lesson I am sticking to. Um, Also, and like moving is really important. And also taking action towards things like calling my reps has honestly been really helpful to my mental health because it feels like I'm doing something. Um, and like I said before, with writing, just being gentle with my brain, staying a light touch on the news, seeing people, and breathing. Breathing is important. Like I notice when I'm speaking at this, even I stop talking and I'm like, oh, air. So like remembering to breathe, um, and yeah, just finding joy, finding balance, doing my best to enjoy where things where I can, and then being gentle with myself when I can't. Just a lot of, I think, my mental health practice is acceptance. It's like when you get a new tattoo and you're like, oh, this didn't quite like, I don't know, it didn't quite pan out, or like it healed and like it's a little like, you can see there's a little um stuff that didn't take. And every time I get a tattoo, I'm just like, this is something I'm doing. And it's going to be on my body, and that's okay. And if I want to change it later, I can. But this is now something that I have made a decision to do, and I will accept the consequences. Um, which is really hard for my anxiety because my anxiety is a lot about like, I got to do this right. I got to do the right thing. If I make a mistake, the world is going to end. And then I have to go, no one's dying. You are not an ER doctor. No one's life is in your hands. Just like keep going. And if you cause harm, you just do your best to make amends.
Yeah, I think kind of similarly to Takata is I do a lot of things with intent and do them intentionally, even if that's and a lot of it is me trying to like fight against my ADHD brain where I can get into a writing mode and then an entire day is gone and my kids have come home and gone to bed and I'm like, oh, what? And so I really try to be intentional in those things like leave the house every day, short form, go touch grass, go see the sky. Um, and that intentionality lends into like a mindfulness in that not only am I doing something with intent, I set out to do it, I'm being mindful of the time and the effort and the mental strain that it's taking. And so if I'm doing something and it is not bringing me joy or it is stressing me out, I stop it. because I've lost my intent. I published under the name Good Intent Press, and it's all kind of built into that is if you set out to do something, know why you're doing it, know what outcome you're seeking, be comfortable with a different one, but maintain that good intent because you set out to do it for a reason. Keep that focus. And I find that really helps me stay centered in a lot of things when I want to react emotionally to a headline I've heard. I have to stop and breathe and be like, the next words I say are going to live in my partner's head for years. They're going to live in my head for years. The next words I write, well, I get to revise them once it's published. It's out there. So I need to do it with intent. And so that's been a big one to help kind of bucket the life into windows. And then one of my biggest ones is limiting my screen time. And so when my littles are home, the laptop is closed and the phone is put away. And I just be intent with my kids. That is their time. They'll go to bed. I can go back into a writing zone. I can go play in Canva and make graphics for Instagram. I can catch up on Discord later. It's not going anywhere. Even if I've missed a conversation that I want to like finally chime in on, I can scroll back up and reply to it. But taking that intent, stepping away from the screens, we do no TV time in our house in the evenings and just take the moment to breathe and be and exist before going back into it. And I found even with like one of my littles, he's got my brain and I'm so sad for him, but I'm also like, hey, we've got tools. We can do this. Like, here's how you navigate this. You're not alone. You're in a spicy household. So let's go. And helping him, he'll hear a headline. He's old enough to parse it and just helping him go, all right, buddy, let's look away from that. Let's think about it, break it out. Let's go outside and have a walk while we talk about these big thoughts we're having. So see the sky, touch the grass, breathe, do things with intent.
Yeah.
Yeah, a thing that I heard from, I think it was Brie of Kerosha the first time I heard it, was the idea that awareness without action is anxiety. And so if all you're doing is pumping
Mm.
awareness into yourself without doing anything like going outside, touching grass, calling your congress people, whatever it is,
Mm.
then it just churns your anxiety and that doesn't help you, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I also do a lot of mindfulness things. I think that's a good way to get yourself out of your head. I started out, I think, on my therapy recovery journey of doing a lot of CBT. And whilst that was really good, I got to a point where I wasn't getting any better. I wasn't progressing more. And I knew that I needed something else because I have PTSD and trauma. Those memories are stored in your brain precognitively. So CBT was never going to deal with that for me. So I had recently come across somebody who's a belief recoder who basically goes with you into your memories to help you heal them. And that's been a really transformative experience for me. So I think, I have all these things that work for me. I too exercise, I swim. If I don't get to swim, I start going twitchy. I know that that's what I need. Think it's figuring out what it is you need to help keep your anxiety for whatever in whatever form it is at bay, um, and embracing that. And I do know your limits, know your triggers, know how to deal with them. Your self-care, guard your time, and take what you need in order to maintain your stability. And mantras, I think, and affirmations, positivity. I mean, I wake up every morning and I envision my day with positivity. And I go to bed, before I go to bed at night, I write down three things that I was grateful for, even if I've had a really horrific day, because you want to train your brain into being more positive. And then I came across a mantra that I thought was fabulous that said, don't wait for life to stop being hard to choose to be happy. And that really resonated with me at the time. And I thought, life, is always going to be hard and we can always struggle, but we can also try and do our best to be positive and not blame anybody else, but just pick ourselves up. Because I could be like, oh, this isn't fair. And why is this happening to me? But if you try and spin that into, I can do this, and all those positive affirmations, I think that can really help. And smile at yourself in the mirror. That's what I do. It's really silly. My husband laughs at me. But every time you go into the bathroom, just smile at yourself, because if you see yourself looking happy, that goes into your brain. So I like that one.
So I like this question because my therapist will periodically ask me like, okay, what are we doing for self-care this week? And I'll be like, okay, are we talking like paying my bills self-care or like like bath bombs and face mask self-care, because I feel like there's two categories of it. Because sometimes self-care is really unglamorous. It's like getting your teeth cleaned or paying your car registration or you know uh planning your meals for the week so that you remember to eat, so I think uh when I start thinking about self-care, I try to start with the basics, especially if I'm feeling elevated or if I'm feeling depressed or anxious or whatever. First, I check in with myself to see, are you thirsty? Have you had water today? How much did you sleep? Like, like, um, are your bills all paid? Is there anything that you've been neglecting that's like hanging in the back of your head? And a lot of times I find that those basic things haven't been addressed yet. So like there have been days where I'm like, God, I'm just like so angry. And then I'm like, wait, I haven't eaten a single thing today and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So let's maybe go make some pasta or something. But aside from that, as far as like, the more fun stuff. Journaling is huge for me. I didn't really learn to journal until a couple of years ago because like I always assumed journaling was like, dear diary, today blah 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 blah. I thought it had to be like a particular format, but when I learned that you can just like ramble about your feelings like you do in therapy in a journal, that was a game changer for me. So I would just be like, I feel this way. I think I feel this way because blah, 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 blah. And then, by the time I get to the end of my journaling session, I usually feel a lot better because I've actually processed all of the thoughts that are in my head and externalized them. I too like to touch grass periodically. I'm not much of an outdoorsy person, but I do like the sky. So yes, getting out, eating good food is a big one for me. I'm a very food motivated individual. So, if I'm having a really bad day, sometimes I'll like grab my husband and be like, "Hey, let's go get this yummy food that I want to eat. It'll make me feel good." Um, just engaging in things that I know always make me happy. Like a couple days ago, I had a bad brain day. I watched Pride and Prejudice. It was great. By the end of the movie, I was smiling and giggling. you know, so having a little, you could even write it down somewhere, but just having a little cache of things that produce dopamine and serotonin in your body is a great way to take care of yourself.
I am now picturing having like a wheel of treats that you just spin it when
Yes. So, okay, I'm not affiliated with this person, but there's a girl, it's How to ADHD on YouTube. She literally makes what she calls a dopa menu, and it has a bunch of stuff that gives her dopamine on it. And I'm like, that's perfect. It's like the same
so good.
thing.
I found that having choices, limited choices, helps a lot with me, especially with ADHD, of being like, okay, I know I have an entire fridge full of food, but I'm going to choose between two of them because it is too much to have to choose between 20. Um, and I live in the Pacific Northwest, so we get a lot of gray skies. It gets really sad for during the winter. It's like just white the whole time. There's no sun. So investing in a sun lamp was a big game changer for me to help to fight that sort of seasonal depression. Um, and then having intentional non-phone time, sort of like what BL was saying, like I put away my phone when I'm having a conversation with a friend or when I go to therapy or doing yoga or like an outdoor activity. I'm really trying to move myself away from the phone so I can fully be present in the moment. And then I have screen locks on all my apps that I know I like to use but are not the best for me. And so they'll like give me a little warning. Sometimes I bypass it, but at least gives me a little bit like oh, maybe I should check on that and not actually continue scrolling on Instagram for the next 10 hours. Um, and then timers for when I know I'm gonna hyper focus. Do a lot of like I'll do the Pomodoro, the like
Mm.
15 minutes, 5 minutes, 45 minutes, 15 minutes. And that helps a lot. And I'll have accountability buddies for certain things. So like I will message my friend and be like, can you just message me tonight and ask if I've taken a shower or like ask if I've eaten food this morning, like just to make sure that I'm doing the basic bodily needs. Because just like Amanda, sometimes I just forget that there's things that my body needs that I'm not giving it. So having okay, yeah, I should do that probably has helped a lot.
Yeah, I love that technique. There again, Right Hive Discord. Accountability buddies are a thing that a lot of writing Discords especially will have for you, and I think that that's super awesome. And co-working streams on Twitch can be really helpful for accountability buddy type stuff as well. Yeah, exactly. Amanda knows what's up.
Yeah, actually building off of the what a lot of people are talking about with the less screen time, my partner and I have a thing where like every day, from 4:45 to 6, we don't touch our phones unless it's like, oh, I need to call this person, or like there's like one or two things that it's okay to do, but like, or there's an emergency, whatever. But in that time period, we try not to touch our phones. And it's really nice, because I didn't really get on social media until I decided I wanted to, be a published author. And the difference in my brain was so noticeable.
Mhm.
Like it really just, I could tell that if I'd been on social media for too long, I was just like this staticky, like just fizzing feeling in my brain. And so having enforced time away from the computer and the phone is really helpful. Um, Barely being on social media, like I have Blue Sky, it's not on my phone. I'm pulled way back from Instagram. I don't check Discord as much as I used to. Like I used to be on Discord like all the time. Pulling back, but trying to maintain community. So it's like not with the people who you only know through their username and you've never met and you've never had a DM conversation, but like the people in my book club or in my friend group that we have a Discord server together. Safeguarding your energy because there's only so much of myself I want to feed to an algorithm. And these days with AI and all that, it's more and more of yourself goes into the algorithm and you are the product. Um, and this might be my anti-capitalist streaks showing, but like to me, it's a little bit of a resistance to say, yeah, no, I'm going to take this life for myself and I'm not going to record it for you. I'm not going to give it to you to chew up and like turn into a learning machine or turn into an advertisement that you can try to sell me. Like, I would like to be a little unknowable.
I saw like a tweet or a thread, I think it was a thread, uh, probably months ago, but it lives in my head rent free, where someone said, I sometimes wonder if because we as authors have to be on social media all the time to market ourselves, if that's why we are so mentally ill. And it basically, you become chronically online by virtue of your career, and it is so important. Even if you're someone like I'm really bad about limiting screen time, I'll admit it right now, but I what I have learned is I just have to not argue with people as much. Like sometimes I see a thing and I'll start typing out like a spirited response and I'll be like, do I really want to give my energy to this? And I'll delete it and move on.
I
Yeah.
don't. I'm so anti-confrontational that I just don't go anywhere near it. So I'm too scared.
Yeah, part of that for me, but also part of it is that I feel like so much confrontation, especially on social media, has become performative.
Mm,
So you're just there to say, well, I don't agree with you. And no one's actually trying to listen to anybody. They're just
Yeah.
there to show that they have clout in their area, to show that they're mad about something. And now the
Yeah.
algorithm is like, oh, you're mad about something. So we're going to show it to more people because then they'll get mad about it. And it becomes this whole like cycle and it just doesn't help anybody. You could just have that conversation in person and it would go much better.
There are people who genuinely ask questions in good faith and are ready and to learn and want to learn. And then there are people who ask questions rhetorically who are trying to rage bait.
mhm.
And if you can learn to discern the difference between those two things, and usually when people are asking, sometimes an ignorant question in good faith, there's an opportunity to teach something there, but otherwise it's just posturing. And I think it's more important to focus on things that actually make a difference rather than keyboard warrioring against some jerk in Missouri who doesn't care about what you think anyway.
Nothing against Missouri. You love Missouri. I will say that with everyone disconnecting from screen time is actually my mandatory fun. I stream on Twitch and I have friends that come and we basically play video games together. And so stepping away from screen time may be the most essential way you can disconnect, but sometimes your mandatory fun maybe is screen time, and that can be okay too if you're checking in with yourself, as everyone here is saying, and you know that it isn't damaging your mental health, that it's contributing to it. So then leads us into our next question, which is back to being more writing related here. What are some challenges that one might face when writing about mental health and how can we try to address them? And for this one, we're going to start with BL. So just, as you're writing this stuff, whether it be in your journal, like people have talked about, or writing it for other people, they may have different techniques and things that you consider when you're doing it. So, BL, what do you think?
I think like two things immediately come to mind. And when I read this question initially, so I'm going to go with the gut instinct answer was I really worry about taking back steps in my own recovery and care and mental health. And I'll notice that happening. And that's how I got into that intentional mindset of, and we've all touched on this to agree, if I'm writing something that is unhealthy for me, I will go write a winged man at Oktoberfest instead. Like I will just be like, nope, we're leaving. I don't have the time for this today. I can leave this room. I'm opting out for this session. But it's taken a lot of work to get there to recognize it. It took, and we've already talked about this a little bit earlier, where it's really hard to raise your hand and say, I need help. I need to set a boundary. Like I'm drowning here. And I have a partner who's really supportive about it. This writing journey, he's learned a lot about me and what I just the stuff that you hide from people still. When you start unpacking it, they're like, oh wow, so that explains 5 years. Um, and so when I was finally able to vocalize, like, hey, it's important to me to tell this story. I'm facing a challenge where I'm feeling myself brought down into it and falling back into that space I was in when I was living this. How do I get out of it? Help me climb out of this. And so that's a big challenge. And I'm not quite sure that regression is the right word, but in a sense it is. Someone smarter than me has the language. So, but that's the word I apply to it is the challenge of regressing, the challenge of not capturing content warnings and trigger warnings appropriately, not writing a character in a genuine enough way to where a reader is not surprised by what's about to happen. They can see the steps that brought the character to the space, the decision, the place they're in. Trying to be aware of all of that is like kind of the other gut instinct answer here is I don't want, I can write a content warning. I can say, hey, this book is going to deal with these topics. Please take care of yourself. But that is such a high level capture of what's going on that I can only give you the Cliffs Notes up front. And my job is telling the story to when we get to that moment that you've been appropriately warned, you've been brought along and can see, okay, we're getting into it. I'm pretty sure what the next chapter is going to deal with. So I'm choosing to skip ahead, read the next start, which I've done this in many books. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to read one forward and then go back and see like I'll watch. I'm the person who will fast forward a rom-com that's stressing me out just to be like, yep, okay, they're kissing. Okay, go back. Like I'm that person. And so that's the other challenge is to not regress myself and to not accidentally, unknowingly hurt a reader who's they're putting their good faith in me that I'm going to take them on this journey. I don't want to cross that good faith. I don't want to hurt someone unintentionally. So being aware of it and just trying to do my job as a responsible author writing about very difficult topics.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, really. And I was really going to focus on the fact that everybody experiences their mental health issues in an individual manner. So trying to write, a character that is everyone's going to agree with is just never going to happen. And that's when you do run the risk of that someone will be upset somewhere, and all we can do is put in the trigger warnings, etc. So I don't know if there's a solution to that. And mental health isn't the only topic in literature that struggles with this. But I think we can just have to be as honest and genuine as we can and come from a good place, to ensure to limit any kind of fallout, of what that might happen. I remember when I first joined Twitter years and years ago, getting into an argument with somebody else about how I should deal with my own mental health. And I was thinking, if I want to laugh at myself, if that alleviates my pain, or however I want to do, that's my prerogative. And nobody should be able to tell me that otherwise. And likewise, I shouldn't be able to tell anyone otherwise. And so it's just tricky. It's just tricky. And I don't know, you just have to be careful and genuine. So, and helpful.
So yeah, writing about mental health, there's like a few different things that I find challenging about it. One is like one of the things that I did to feel like I was doing something in the current political climate was I joined a charity anthology that was feminine rage themed, which was great. And all of the proceeds went to an abortion fund, and that felt really good for me. However, writing a story, it was like almost 15,000 words, where I was spending 15,000 words being in a place of feminine rage was a really difficult thing for me, because the other side, they say that anger is a secondary emotion, and for me, it's usually secondary to sadness. And that was a hard space to put myself in for hours at a time. So, recognizing when it was time to step away, also having the ending in mind, right? Because to deal with those subjects, even if you know it's going to resolve, you still have to essentially duplicate or recreate the situation that causes the rage in the first place, or the sadness, or whatever. So sometimes it almost feels a little bit self-harming to delve into those things, and sometimes you're in a space where you're wondering, like, am I actually hurting myself or re-traumatizing myself to revisit this in such a vivid and like what's the word I want, like real way in your own head. So I think it's important to recognize when to step away, to remember that you are in control of the scenario that you're placing before your reader and before yourself. And then to remember also that it is going to resolve, maybe the situation that you're processing in your writing didn't resolve in the way that you wanted to, but you actually get to decide the resolution of this one. So remembering that, I think, is important. When it comes to writing mental health that you don't have a personal experience with, there are some challenges with that as well. I'm working on a sequel to this book with Love Juniper, and there was a little bit of time where I was considering having the main character deal with OCD, but I do not have personal experiences with OCD. So I actually went to the public forums that I have, which are like Discord or other writing groups or threads, and I said, hey, I'm looking to talk with people who are willing to like talk with me about their experience with obsessive compulsive disorder, because I don't really know that much about it, and I want to make sure that I'm doing a good job if I decide to represent it in my book. And when I wound up learning about it, meant that, okay, this isn't going to fit with this character, but it's still something I want to revisit later on. Because I think that representation is important, but you want to do it in a way that's genuine, because otherwise it lands poorly for people. And then finally, remembering that when you're writing about mental illness that you yourself have dealt with, your experience is just your experience. And because of that, you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable position, where people, you're opening yourself up to critique of your own personal experience, because obviously you're writing your own personal experience. If someone hasn't had that experience, and they're maybe not uh, as ready to accept that that is a, a, a shade of that experience, they might come after you. They might tell you you're wrong. They might tell you that your representation sucks. And knowing in your heart that, kind of goes back to what BL was saying about intentionality. Knowing in your heart that you did the truest and best representation of that you could have, is going to get you through those situations. So being honest in the best way that you can be, and then having people around you to remind you if it ever gets really bad, like, hey, you did what you could, and that's enough.
When you write your first draft of whatever it is, short story or novel, I like to think about it as the shitty first draft, the draft for yourself. You don't have to make it perfect. This is the one where it is slightly therapy and slightly a novel, because you are just trying to process what's going on. And when you come back to it, you can then look at it. Okay, now I'm looking at it as a reader. I'm looking at it as an editor. Then you can look for sensitivity readers. You can sort of work your way through, like, how is this accurately representing or not? But when you're first writing it and you're thinking about your mental health within, like, I like to write out of order. So if I'm writing a scene and then it's very triggering for me in that moment, I'm like, you know what? We're just going to jump to the end and now we're going to write the happy part. And then we'll come back to it and write a couple paragraphs and we'll write another happy scene and then we'll come back to it. Um, and finding that balance because you want it to feel genuine in the story. So you don't necessarily want to shy away from the feelings you're feeling, but you also want to protect yourself as an author. So being able to know when that feeling is this is a good phase that I'm going through and I need to write it out versus this is something that's being really deeply hurtful for me and I need to step away from it briefly.
So for me, I'm a romance writer, so there's always going to be a happy ending in my books, and I think that's very comforting to me. I also try to balance the angstiness with some humor and banter, partly for the reader, partly for me, because it's fun and I want to write things that are fun and I want my characters to, like, on one hand, I want to break them like a geode, and on the other hand, I want to give them fun and joy. Like the book I'm writing right now, I thought it was going to be so dark and angsty. It's like two goths with lots of trauma, and I was ready for it. And then halfway through, I was like, oh my God, they're just bantering and they're having fun, and it's like I'm enjoying this. What's going on? But it was what I needed because, you know, I couldn't I couldn't have that much darkness, and I, it worked because it's what they needed too. And maybe in revisions I'll cut some of that, but I don't think so. I think right now I don't feel the need to put out something super dark and heavy. It's totally valid to put out a light thing. It's totally valid to have your buttery, sweet, wonderful books. And if anyone tells you that that's not real writing, um, because it totally is. This is like if a book makes you happy and a book gives you escape, whether you're reading or writing it, that is a wonderful thing. That is a gift. And like anyone who says that books have to be serious, we're we're scarred by English teachers because, you know, this is not true. And I think this is a lot of what the stigma that romance gets is that we're frivolous and we're for feminine people, and good Lord, those feminine people, they can't possibly have a heavy thought in their head. But romance novels explore so much and they give you pleasure.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, especially now, especially when the idea of pleasure is under attack, especially for marginalized genders. Like, pleasure is important. And I think that really is my balance there is.
I was thinking about, so when you're writing a novel or a short story, you're really just taking a slice of whatever this character's life is at this point. So don't feel like you have to fit in all of the anxiety or all the ADHD or all the whatever. Like you can just take, oh, this is like one way that anxiety manifests for me, or one way that I want it to manifest for this character, and I'm going to put that into this book. Like you don't have to do all the things in at once. It's okay. You have many books in your life. You will write many books in your life, so you don't have to like get it all in that one.
They all start with a seed from you, and that doesn't have to look the same by the end as it did at the beginning. It can evolve because you will evolve. Everything evolves. There's nothing static, and there's nothing constant but change.
Amanda brought up the Rage anthology, which I was also in, and it was so yeah, I was like, hey, that was such an experience, but it reminded me of when we were talking about finding community to to how do you find community? A lot of us at the same time were looking for a very specific community, and I found it on Threads. I know in Facebook writer groups it was really big, but if some of the other suggestions that we brought up are things like if you there's an author in the Rage Anthology who I know lives in a very out of the way place in Alaska, and they had commented in this community we built how amazing it was to be so far flung from everyone, but have this group of like-minded authors who are mad about so many similar things to talk through ideas and get feedback and beta read each other's work. And so anthologies as a writer in that space, some of the organizers put together these incredible communities, Discord servers, Facebook groups, DM chat messages, and it's been so rewarding and so grounding as an author in times when a lot of us are struggling to find that space where it's like, okay, this is the channel I go where I want to have a lot of feminine rage, or I did one, it was a queer cozy monster romance anthology. And I was like, this is where I go when I want to have the happily ever afters and kick my feet, squeal about an idea. And so, yeah, anthologies to bring us back to an earlier question. So, thank you, Amanda, for bringing that one up.
Writehive
Um,
does a bunch of anthologies, don't they? Yeah, so Writehive's a perfect place.
Continue the plug. Yes. My last question here was, uh, and this is where we're cycling back to the notion of dystopia, which is something that some of us have written about and at least thought about and are living through. So, a criticism of some dystopian stories is that they depict conditions as they are today in many parts of the world as if they were some terrifying alternate present or potential future. What can writers learn from that critique and from the ways that real people are already coping with dystopian conditions?
I don't actually take that as a criticism. Um, I think that whether intentional or not for a writer to be writing about something that's happening in our worlds, if anything, it's raising awareness about the topic, about the country, about the culture, whatever it is. And that, in my head, can only be a good thing. Um, and I think that we should continue to do that, to be honest. And I also think that exploring dystopian settings, whether they're, happening or they're not happening, gives us the conversation. It gives us the safe place to explore these things and our ethics and our morals and what we actually want out of our worlds. And then it that safe area, but it makes us aware of how very frightening these things are and how they can come to pass if they're not already there. And I can just think that that starts a dialogue, it starts preparation, and makes people aware of things that could be hitting our society, even if they're already out in another one, for instance. So I actually think it's a good thing.
Yeah, kind of touching on what Marisa was saying. Like when the first time Trump was voted into office, I started watching The Handmaid's Tale. I don't know why I did that to myself, but I did. It's a great story, and obviously based off of a Margaret Atwood series of books. And one of the things that I think some people don't realize about that book series is that every atrocity done to those women are things that happen across the world to women currently. The I kind of like when you sent out these questions and when I first saw this question, I was like, well, yeah, of course it's a reflection of It to me, it's almost a caricature um of what these things are, right? It's taking something that's happening and presenting it to perhaps a privileged populace. Like, this is the worst thing that is happening currently to people. Like, this is something that occurs, but it's packaged in a way where you know I, as a white woman, can understand it, right? It's contextualized for my understanding of the world. And yes, maybe it's a little over the top, right? And I can see how that could be a problem because people are like, that's never going to happen. And you have to be like, well, no, it's literally happening already. Um, but I do think that I don't write dystopia, and I honestly don't engage in a lot of it because it scares me. But I do think that's what dystopian uh, uh, narratives are for. They they point out an extreme that, if unchecked, these things that are happening in our day-to-day lives, they can get really gnarly, like it can get really bad. And I think that is like one of the purposes that narratives can serve, is like, hey, if we don't pay attention to this is what could happen. It's speculative, but it's also um it's it's a warning, right?
I have conflicted feelings on this question. In one way, I completely agree that it's this we should be allowed to explore things like this. But also I don't want to discount the real horrors that people are going through. So I think it's really about making sure that all parties can explore this. It's not just like the white people that live in the United States, but anybody could write about this future, write about this present, and talk about how the ways that they are navigating it currently, um, as opposed to it just being a dystopian. But I also think the dystopian can really be a therapeutic thing. I was also reading The Handmaid's Tale when Trump got elected, which was a weird decision as well. And it felt like in many ways it was a little bit like, oh God, this is horrible, but also it was a little cathartic of I know what might happen. Um, and so it can be very therapeutic to read through it, and to explore those things, but also realizing that these are things that real people are dealing with. And so making sure you're doing your research if you feel like you're going to be writing about something that might be happening currently.
Once upon a time, my first drawer novel series was a dystopian new adult, Buffy fanfic, basically. But uh, and I think I would never write dystopia now because I don't think I could handle it. But I find it sort of intertwines in my brain with post-apocalyptic. And to me, the things that really stand out for that is the resilience of the characters. What that tells me is that people can survive these circumstances and that people are currently surviving these circumstances. I feel like, especially now with American exceptionalism, people are like, oh my God, the world is crashing down around us, democracy is ending, and there's nothing we can do. I'm just going to lay down and die. And I'm like, I've had this conversation with people, and I'm like, we're in a workspace. Please stop. But I think that to just give up is to discount the fact that millions of people live this way. And they're fighting back and they're surviving and they're finding their own ways of finding joy, which is apparently my theme for today. And just doing the best that they can. Like we're not, no one's the chosen one in this situation. There's not going to be the one final girl or whoever who's going to come and save us with the one ring. What we have is a bunch of people who are trying to make progress. And what that progress looks like, I don't know. This whole year is just we'll see. We don't know what's going to happen. We'll see. And we can look at dystopia as a way of saying, well, how did other people imagine it? In the parable of Sour, they founded their own community. In Handmaid's Tale, they escaped. Sorry, I just spoiled those books. Um, but they're old, okay? You can find the spoilers online. Um, but like it's a call to action,
Mm.
and if you want to criticize that genre for giving us this look at other people and a sort of oh my God, how could this possibly happen thing? And I think that's totally valid. And in which case, I think people should look at those places and be like, what are they doing? And maybe what can I do to help without being, saviorism, but like, what are they doing? And how can we learn from those lessons? And how can we apply those lessons? And how can we be in community with that?
Yeah, so community is the answer. Literally. So as has been said about, I really liked the take on this criticism as a repackaging it so people of a different privilege can understand and form empathy, which also community, my big empathy with a capital E. It I think the criticism gives the author a chance to reflect. Did I do something wrong? Did I misrepresent? Did I not think about the circumstances in which people live outside of my immediate scope? A chance for growth and to do better next time. All we can do is our best. But on the inverse, it's that idea of the repackaging so where people can see it like let's take things that are happening and now afflict rich white women with it, and suddenly there's a whole different subset of people with awareness and passion about something that before they were like, oh, that wouldn't happen here. Um, so it's this is a tough. I read this question multiple times. Like, how do you answer that? And I think everyone has said it way better than I can. So I'll say community, the repackaging for empathy. And if you have truly missed the mark as a writer, then take that moment for self-reflection and do better next time. Don't repeat your mistakes.
And I think, like you just said, who is your audience? Because the story you tell can be impacted by the audience you're trying to reach. Definitely.
Mm. I do write dystopian, and I have a young adult dystopian trilogy about genetic modification and enhancements. So basically, you end up being able to take a pill and grow wings. But it starts with eradicating disease, regenerating limbs. And I was fascinated by genetics. I was a bit of a science geek at school. When Dolly the sheep was cloned, I thought that boggled my mind. When we started talking about designer babies and changing your eye color in vitro, I just started thinking, how far do you go with this kind of stuff? Where are we going to draw that line, and who's going to draw it? And that, for me, I really wanted to explore that in my trilogy, which is what I do, and take it to that extreme to see what could actually happen. Now, I don't get afraid of that per se because it's not here yet, but it could be. And I guess that's the scary thing. But I also write it for young adult because I want our younger generations to be aware of this ethical dilemma. Um, and my main character has panic attacks and anxiety. So, chosen one, flawed chosen one, there to save the world. So, yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you all so, so, so much for being here. This is a wonderful panel. So many good ideas, so much stuff that we can take with us into our lives, I think. And so now what I'm going to ask everyone to do is let everyone know, all of our viewers, where they can find you online, and perhaps if you have something coming out or an event coming up in after this is going to come out in July. So anything before that, unfortunately, is going to be out of gas. But where can people find you online and what can they look forward to seeing from you soon? And for this one, I'm going to start with Amanda.
So I'm online on pretty much every platform as Amanda Can Write. And as far as for what's next for me, I am currently working on the sequel for With Love Juniper. I'm also writing, speaking of butter books, a little spicy romance novella about Juniper and Oleander right now, and that's probably going to come out. I'm going to probably self-publish that sometime this year. So, if you find me, reach out. I love talking to people. And thank you so much for having me. It was a really enjoyable conversation today.
Yeah. So I'm Camden's Corner. That's my website handle, and then my Instagram and Blue Sky and Mastodon technically, but I don't think anyone really goes on there as much. And then I'm mostly a short story writer right now, so something that I'm really excited about coming out, which I think will be right after July, so hopefully around the same time, um, is a playable board game anthology.
Ooh.
So the story I wrote is about Green Lake in Seattle, and it's a choose your own adventure story about pregnancy and fighting uteruses.
Oh.
It's fun.
That is so fun.
I'm a Katta Kis on, I think at Blue Sky, and then I think I'm Katta Kis Writes on Instagram. I'm mostly on Blue Sky these days. You can follow me on Instagram, but it's updates only. And then I have a website and a newsletter, kattakis.com. The newsletter is probably the best way to chat with me, though I am on Blue Sky. I have my third book is coming out sometime in the fall. I haven't set a date yet, but it's coming out in the fall. It's called No Love in LA, and it's the third book in my Pagans Pop Star series, featuring my two prickly goths, metal singers, who don't like each other. Well, one of them doesn't like the other, and the other one is obsessed with them. So, it's fun. I'm enjoying it.
Hi, I am BL Brown, and I am pretty much everywhere as Britta Writes Things. That's the website.com, TikTok, Instagram. But TikTok's embarrassing if you want a good laugh, so head on over. I'm mostly active on Instagram and Threads. I do exist on this platform, but I don't go there anymore, so don't look for me there. I am working on the third book in the Witch of the Domain series. It's going to be called Ritual Tools and will be out sometime in November, like Kata. That's a nebulous sometime in the fall, but we're getting there. It's in revisions. And yeah, this has been awesome. Like, thank you so much for having me and to get to chat with everyone here.
Hey, so I'm everywhere. I mean, you'll find me anywhere, but my happy place is TikTok. So I am Marisa Noelle 12. I do have a website, marisanoelle.com. If you subscribe, you get all 11 Origin novellas set in the Unadjusted universe for free. So as they become available, there is 6 at the moment. What am I working on? So my Mermaid Romantasy series is all coming out on audio. The first one's already out, and they're being released every 6 weeks from the publisher throughout the rest of the year. I've got a young adult horror coming out in a few months, which I like to think of as Jaws meets the environment. It's called Plastic. And another YA horror, it's a sci-fi horror about 16s on a camping expedition who get stuck in a time loop with a serial killer. I'm not sure when that's coming out because that is with a publisher, hopefully next year sometime. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of other things I'm going to be working on, so I won't bore you with it all now. Thank you. It's been awesome chatting to all of you. I've really enjoyed your insights and your ideas. Fabulous. Let's do it again.
I have been and continue to be Valerie Valdez, and you can find me at valerievaldez.com. I'm Valerie Valdez on Blue Sky mostly, and also randomly on Discord. And I have my forthcoming book is Witchy Wood, a fantasy rom-com spellcasting competition story. Little enemies to lovers for you. And you can also watch me almost every night on Twitch at The Kids Are Asleep, which is when ostensibly we play video games. So thank you all so, so much again. This has been wonderful. Thank you, Right Hive, for putting all this together for us. And to everyone watching this, I hope that I'm in the comments talking to you. But if I'm not, thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of the convention. Thanks, everybody.